guys, next up on our video series is going to be the NB48 2.1, and we're going to change it up a little bit. We've done full-on builds for most of the kits lately, but the 2.1 starting on the same basic platform as the 2.0, we just kind of wanted to highlight all of the new parts that are going to be coming with the 2.1 and help you make the decision on why it might be important to switch from the 2.0 to the 2.1. So we're going to go step by step through the build kit and kind of show you all the differences, and then ultimately show you at the end what it looks like when the car is fully put together. So starting with bag A and bag B, we have the differentials. Now, these diffs that come in this kit are going to have the new TKR 9115B cups. These are the new and improved cups. You can also use the old cups if you would like, but this one is going to come with these new ones. You can kind of tell by the cutouts in the cup that these are the new ones. The other major difference that you're going to see that you haven't maybe seen before, that we haven't really released, is this new spur gear. This is the TKR 9419 spur gear 48 tooth. And this doesn't have a double bearing for the nitro buggy. It just has a single bearing. The new center diff mount allows for single bearing on both sides, so you don't need the double bearing mount or anything like that. So that's going to be the only major difference that you guys haven't really seen yet. Other than that, this one is going to have the TKR 9150B gears. So these gears, the major difference, to be able to tell the difference between the stock gears from the 2.0 and the stock gears from the 2.1, is on the 2.1 there's only one hole for the pin to go through when you're putting the diff together, whereas the old gears have two sets of holes, so it looks like they're perpendicular, whereas this one just has one. So that's the easiest way to tell the difference, minus just looking at how the gears are cut. These gears are cut a lot deeper. They definitely look a little bit sharper, so that's the major difference on those. And then this one is going to include the new O-rings and the old shims. So we do also have a new shim that kind of connects to the diff cup, and it allows the shim to not spin around, while it has diff action. But what we figured out is, obviously they're not the easiest thing to install. So just for our general customers, we wanted to give them the improved differential feeling while also making it easy to build out of the box. So this one includes the old shims, but all of the rest of the new parts, which we found, back at the shop, when going around the track, it creates a really desirable effect. Typically, the guys will either run the old cup with the new shim, or the old shim with the new cup. So this, for the kit and for just making it easy to build, we opted for the old shim and the new cup. So this is going to be all the new parts for the differentials. The diffs are going to be, you're going to have a lot more drive, better feeling off and through the corner with this setup than previous, and that's why all of this stuff was included as is in the 2.1 kit. All right, bags C and D for the NB48 2.1 kits are the two bulkheads, the front and rear bulkheads. So most of this stuff is going to be pretty similar to what you've seen before. The major differences are going to be that these kits now have the revised bulkheads in them, which just make your bearings last longer. Everything is going to last longer. Typically, the gearing and everything doesn't need to be shimmed as often. The ring and pinion gears last longer. And ultimately, just the bulkheads are a little bit stiffer, a little bit stronger, and we haven't seen as many failures with them. So those came with the NT48 and ET48 2.0 kits, and now we've integrated them into the 2.1. And also the shock towers, so the front shock tower with the extra set of holes for the camera links, as well as the shock spacing being closer, so you can make more minute adjustments on your shock location. And same with the rear, you have an extra row of holes on the inside, closer shock location changes, as well as the ability to run the short shocks or the long shocks without having to take the tower off the car. And you can move the wing mount further up or further down without having to change anything on the shock tower as well. And this car also comes stock with the tall wing mount, just as we've been including on the Truggies on the 2.0 platform. So the 2.1, you get the tall wing mount as well. And now the Rear body mount has been adjusted so that you don't have to do any sort of cutting on the body mount. It all just fits perfectly out of the package and is completely ready to go. So this is going to be your bulkhead assembly, and those are all the major changes for that one. And on to the next bag. Bag E for the NB48 2.1 is the center diff assembly. So this is kind of a change from any of the other 8-scale kits we've done. The center diff is going to be put together pretty early in this one. This is going to be a totally different design than you guys have ever seen from us. This isn't any sort of thing that we've released before and then we're including in this kit. This one's totally new. So now the center diff mount has these keyed pieces on the bottom, and it's going to key into the top. So it's still going to be a split center diff mount, but these keyed pieces ensure that the fitment is going to stay more solid, more rigid, and the center diff isn't allowed to move around as much laterally or up and down. So the center diff is going to stay in a more stationary position, and it's going to provide better drive to both the front and rear wheels. So it's a lot more solid mount. It also has these keys on the bottom of the mount as well, which key into the chassis, which means it can't really walk around on the chassis as well either. So this is just a really solid mount. It seems to give better drive as well as a little bit better runtime than what we had seen in the past with our previous revisions of these center diff mounts. The other major changes to this one are just going to be the revised brake cams, which give a little bit better brake feel, last a little bit longer, and they're easier on your electronic components like your throttle servo. You don't have to run as much throttle servo EPA, basically like endpoint, to get the same desired effect. So you can put less stress on the servo to get the same amount of braking force. So just a more efficient design all around, from throttle to brake and everything in between, is what you're going to find on the 2.1. And it's definitely been a really nice improvement to the platform. All right, so next up we've got bags F and bags G. And the chassis actually comes in right before this. You're going to mount your center diff in bag E to the chassis. So the chassis itself is new as well. It allows you to key in your center diff mounts. It also has different cutouts and a different rear end section for the lowered blocks that are going to be released with the 2.1, which we're going to talk about here in a second. So there's going to be lowered blocks in the rear end. And it also is revised in the front end so that you can run slightly lower blocks in the front as well, which will be coming out with the kit. So we'll talk about that stuff later. But this chassis is revised for the 2.1 kit. Not something you've really seen before. And yeah, it doesn't require any cutting or dremeling or anything like that to run any lowered blocks. It's all just ready to go out of the package. Now bags F and bags G are going to be the rear end assembly. So you got a couple of changes in this one. We have a brand new rear arm. It's a little bit more rigid and a little bit longer. So it's going to provide a little bit more stability as well as agility, ironically. And these are different as well. So as I said, they're a little bit longer also, but they have removed the rear outer pill adjustments. We typically just used the A pills, if you're familiar with the 2.0, which was just static toe, no extra toe, no extra anything really at the outer hinge pin. So we just took those out, made the arm a little bit stronger right at the outside. And they also now include the sleeves that are on the inside. They include another set of sleeves on the outside for the outer rear hinge pins as well. So now there's both the hinge pin sets on the rear end are sleeved. So all new arm, and with that we also have an all new rear hub, which doesn't include any sort of height adjustment anymore. It's all just set at the low position from the 2.0 vehicle. But what it does do is allow you to change your link height at the hub as well. So you can move the link up or down or in or out. So you have 5 different links that you can choose from in 3 different heights, as you can see with all of these different inserts that you can put in there. So you have these 3 links, these 2 extra links, and then you have the other heights and other links as well, where you can flip them back and forth and do all sorts of different things with them. So a lot more options on where to put your rear link, height-wise and length-wise. And we were talking about the lower C&D blocks. These C&D blocks lower your rear hinge pins, which are something that a lot of people were playing with or doing with the the mounts that the Van Dalen family were selling for quite a while. So we've integrated that into the 2.1 kit, where these now key into the chassis, just like the stock ones from the 2.0 would, as well as on the CE mount now, you are able to include extra screws into the chassis for increased rigidity as well. So a lot of different changes on the 2.1 kit, as we talked about. Also, you know, a new outer rear hinge pin to accept the hinge pin inserts on the outside as well. This car is going to come with universals. And the only other major difference that I've seen on this step is that now we have +1 hexes that are not lightened. So just a regular +1 hex, which is something we haven't had before. That's going to be included in the kit as well. Those are just going to last a little bit longer than the lightened ones. Obviously, they are a little bit heavier, so that's kind of the trade-off, but it's just not an option that we've had before. So definitely something nice to have in the kit. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the rear end assembly. All right, guys, next up are bags H and I, which are the front end assembly. Major differences on this one are going to be that the front arms are new. Not really anything geometry-wise changed, but they added some clearance areas, like up here on the front of the arm for the steering rack, and some other just little clearance spots that just going to make it to where nothing needs to be dremeled. It all just fits on properly and just gives a cleaner look. The other major changes are just like the C and D blocks. The A and B blocks are slightly lower as well, so you can lower the roll center, and they're going to sit further into the chassis. So that was another reason why the chassis needed to be updated. And then beyond that, we've already had revised spindles, but we have an all-new spindle design as well for the 2.1. These were actually used for a weekend, so that's why they are already built. But basically, they're 18 degree, just like they were before, but they give you the ability to run the outer link all the way on top of the kingpin, and a little bit shorter. So all of these different links are longer than what you would see on the previous edition of the spindle. We just like the feeling better of the longer link. And with that, the link needed to be changed. So now we have this angled link that allows it to be right on top of the upper, kingpin area without rubbing on anything. And then all the screws are no longer in the top and the bottom of the spindle and the caster block. Now it is just these pins that slide in, and then you have a screw that you screw in on the side, and it holds the pin in. So no more of those screws that come in through the top or the bottom that would chip off parts or do anything like that. Those are all gone. And with that, there was a new spindle just to make sure that everything fit properly as well. And then the spindle plates also, which are now going to be kind of a standard thing. So all new spindle, all new caster block for the 2.1 kit. And then, as we talked about in the rear end assembly, you also have the +1 non-lightweight hexes as well, which I personally was pretty excited about also. And that's going to be your major differences for the front end assembly. So that's going to be bag H and bag I. And yeah, that's going to pretty much do it for these. All right, guys, so I thought we would touch on bags J and K just for a second. Those are going to be your steering rack and all the parts and pieces to put the front and rear end of the chassis on the car. So nothing's different with the steering rack assembly. It does tell you to mount the steering rack plate forward in the manual instead of the reverse way that it told you in the manual for the 2.0. And for bag K, it does have the revised front chassis brace. But other than that, J and K are pretty much exactly the same as what you've seen before. The next major difference that you're going to see is going to be with the shock builds, which are bags L and M. The first major difference that you're going to see is that these come with a 10-hole piston. It's also a tapered piston. This is a design from Jared Wiggins. It has 3 different hole sizes. And most of the guys have been running some variation of this piston for a year or so, whether it was 10-hole or 16-hole. It has the extra room and the dimples to be able to drill out the rest of the holes if you would like. So you can do a lot of different things with that piston, but it comes standard. It's already drilled out, ready to go. The 2.1 kit also gives you the option to run emulsion or bladder in the kit. You don't need any extra parts or anything like that. And then the other major difference with the 2.1 is that it is going to include the long rear shock bodies and shock shafts to run the long shocks standard on the car for the 2.1, as well as the new rear black yellow springs. So we've got these, the new line of rear springs, which are longer, better spring engagement, better feel around the track. And so this one's going to include the yellow springs for that. So that's going to be the major differences for the shock package for the 2.1. It's just going to be the long shocks on the rear end, the Wiggins 10-hole pistons included in the kit, and the ability to run emulsion and bladder directly out of the kit without having to have any extra parts or anything like that. And yeah, that's going to get us through our shocks and on to the next step. All right, the last and final change or updated to the kit comes in the form of the air filter. Those of you familiar with Tekno cars, especially the nitro ones, we've always had a double kinked air filter, but most of the drivers have decided that they liked a single kink design, which is what was on the 0.3 better. So what happened is not everybody, but Tekno went ahead and updated the air filter mount, so now it's just a single kink. It uses our updated air filter, and we have all of those for sale, the extra ones with the new red filter oil, which is really light. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to dab it off with a paper towel a whole bunch to get the the excess air filter oil out, and provides a really nice throttle feel, and stays pretty clean. So that's going to be the last major change. It's just a single kinked filter design instead of a double kinked filter. And this also, when you put it all together with the new center diff mount, once this is all together, you can put a body clip through it, and that'll make sure that your air filter isn't moving around, getting caught in the center diff. So the mount itself actually has a spot for this to hold, even though there's only a single kink instead of the dual kink. So this is going to be pretty much it for the changes for the 2.1 car. We are going to come back and show you kind of what the car looks like all together. But yeah, as far as going through your kit and building it and seeing differences, that's pretty much it. And I know that everybody at Tekno RC is really excited about this kit to come out, and we hope you guys really enjoy it. So now we'll come back here in a second, show you what the kit looks like, and that's going to wrap up the video. All right, guys, and finally, here's Jared Wiggins' race car. So there are some subtle differences on this from what the kit's actually going to look like, but for the most part, this gives you a gist of what you're going to see when you buy a 2.1 kit. So new center diff mount, everything's all put in there and ready to go. Definitely a lot more rigid, solid design than what we've seen in the past. We've also got the new spindles and caster blocks all installed, ready to go. New front shock tower, new rear shock tower, tall wing mount, new rear arms, new rear hubs, the inserts in the rear end on the outside, inserts on the inside, obviously. Then we've got the new chassis, new C and D block, new A and B block. Yeah, so quite a few differences with this kit than what you have seen previously. But yeah, no dremeling, no real aftermarket extra parts needed to put this thing together, just kind of as is. But yeah, this is Jared's race car, kind of pretty much built to 2.1 spec. It's really close to what you're going to see out of the box, setup wise and everything. Obviously there's no shocks on the car, but he's got his mounts and everything set up for the long shocks in the rear, and then the standard front shocks. So yeah, pretty standard stuff. He's got the +1 hexes front and rear, just the standard. And yeah, pretty much everything is ready to rip as it would be when you buy the kit. Obviously, like we've said before, the guys at Tekno are really excited about this kit release and the evolution of the NB48 2.0 into the 2.1 and all that means. And yeah, we can't wait for you guys to get it in your hands and see what you think, and hopefully go really fast around the track and beat all your buddies. So again, thank you guys for watching the 2.1 kit build for Tekno RC. Yeah, as always, if you have any questions or need anything, hit us up on the social media channels. Typically they are Tekno RC or something similar, or go to our website and use the contact us part of the site and hit us up there, and we'll be able to answer your questions pretty much at any one of those different things, as well as just hitting up our factory drivers, Jared Tebow, Jared Wiggins, Seth, Tyler, Joey, Marco Barufalo if you're over in Europe, Cole Caston, any of those guys, anybody who I'm forgetting as well. And they'll be able to answer your questions or any questions that you have. So guys, again, thank you for watching. This is the 2.1, basically all the changes and the updates. And yeah, we look forward to seeing it in you guys' hands.